iron mask, puts him away in prison, tries to take over everything. Here's you got every plot for where you got the guy, they think everybody's dead, but he's not dead, and he comes back at the end and reveals himself, and ta-da, there's the hero. You know, the two cowboys on this cliff, you know, and the bad guy shoots him, man, and you think, oh man, he falls off the cliff. But miraculously, he gets hung on a branch. He's hanging there. Oh, you know, you think he's dead, like Jesus Christ, you know, they thought he was dead. See, basic plots. And it's always over typically a woman, the heroine. The heroine at the beginning, she really doesn't like the hero. You know, she's kind of put off by him. He's bored. He's goofy. He's a dipstick. Or maybe he's just brash or something about him she doesn't like. And she has more affection toward the villain. But then she finds out what the villain really is. And the hero comes in, even though he's been spurned by his love. He doesn't forget her. And he forgives her. And he comes and rescues her. How many plots does that fit? Almost every movie. Almost every cowboy movie. And in the old days, they didn't even try to hide it. In the old days, the good guy wore a white hat. He was always on a white horse. And usually, if it was a good Western, there was a cavalry charge at the end of some kind. You know, coming back, Second Advent. Any movie, you name me a movie, brother, and I will show you the plot. And it's all right here in the King James Bible. It doesn't matter what it is. Jesus Christ coming back for his bride, dying for them. Nowadays, everything is shifted, and you've got your culture now, which is a negative culture, where the hero is anti-culture or anti-establishment, like Batman, you know, the dark villain. They ride the black horse. See, that's that shift of everything trying to make you believe bad is good and good is bad. See, that's that shift of anti-culture. And that's in the Bible. That's where the Antichrist comes in and reveals himself and the world fawns after him. The anti-culture. Whereas Christ is really the good guy, but nobody wants him because, you know, he's the government or he's the establishment. And we got to be anti-establishment, man. You know, 60s, dude. And here's your plot. So we find here that she tries to kill off the kid, and the kid is swept away and hid and taken care of until he's raised up. You know, that's probably every kung fu movie I've ever seen. And martial art movie where the little Oriental kid, you know, he's swept away and they take him and he comes up and becomes a kung fu master, you know, and he comes back. Or what's that Princess Bride, you know, I am the son of Sonoe Matoya Manada, be prepared to die, you know. You killed my father. And they have the big sword fight in that, you know, with the Princess Bride. Any plot you want to come up with, it's there. All right, so now, verse 4. And the 7th year of Jehoiada sent and fetched the rulers over hundreds. Now, this guy here, Jehoiada, is a priest. Look over in verse 15 and verse 9 and 15. You see Jehoiada the priest. And it says Jehoiada the priest. This is not the Jehoiada which is the father of Benaiah, which is one of the three mighty. It's not the same guy. It's a different Jehoiada. You go back over there where Jehoiada, who is the father of Benaiah, and if you remember Benaiah, he's one of David's three mighty men. And this is not the same guy. So that way when you're reading, you don't get them confused, because people say, well, how can this be? Here's Jehoiada here and here's Jehoiada there. It's because they don't pay attention. This is Jehoiada the priest. This is not the father of Benaiah. So just kind of, that way you just get it established so you know. All right, so anyway, he brings in the captains and the guards, and he brought them all into the house of the Lord and made a covenant with them and took an oath of them in the house of the Lord and showed them the king's son, the big reveal. You know, they bring the kid in, he goes, everybody in the movie theater goes, oh, he's not dead. You know, the big heartbreaking moment where the hero now is put back into the limelight, he's back in the story. And he commanded them, saying, verse 5, this is the thing that ye shall do. A third part of you that enter in on the Sabbath day shall even be keepers of the watch of the king's house. So we're going to set up guards. We're going to have guards that come around. And he says, you're going to take and you're going to be keepers of the house. And a third part shall be at the gate of Sur. That's verse 6. And a third part at the gate behind the guard. So shall ye keep the watch of the house, that it be not broken down. And two parts of all you that go forth on the Sabbath, even they shall keep the watch of the house of the Lord about the king. So now he's got the king's guard. And you shall compass the king. Now the king is probably about 6 years old here, Joab, young boy. So they got guards at all the gates and around the outside of the house, and then they've got the guards that are actually going to encompass around the king as they bring him in. And this boy. And he says, compass the king, every man with his weapon in his hand. So your weapons are drawn. We ain't going in there with your clip still in your thing. The clip's going to be in the weapon. It's going to be one in the chamber, and anything within range dies. That's the way it is. If it approaches, it dies. It's not going to be no if, no ands, no buts. And notice he says, and he that cometh within ranges. In other words, if he comes within sword length, he dies. Anything that comes within that, he dies. I don't care for whatever reason. We're not going to take any chances. It's the king. And of course, this is where we get our word, our modern day word for rifle range or range. In other words, it becomes within the length of that weapon's ability to shoot or be effective. In other words, a rifle range may go out to 500 yards. Well, that weapon is effective to 500 yards. Amen? So that's the range. Whenever a gun on a naval ship, they call for range. And they call for the azimuth and and all that, and they fire for effect, and they look and they go, okay, that's good. Over so much, up so much, and they get it in range. Once they get it in range, they let loose. So this is where we get the word range. So he says, anything that cometh within the ranges, let him be slain. And be ye with the king as he goeth out and as he cometh in. So you 24-hour guard. So you guys make up who's going to do the night shift, who's going to do the afternoon shift, who's going to do the day shift. But everybody, whenever that king moves, he's going to have a king's guard. And the captains over hundreds did according to all that Jehoiada, the priest, commanded. Now right there, verse 9 is where your Catholic Church bases everything that their theocracy is built on. The priest commands the army. You see that? That's why all through the Catholic Church history, the Catholic Church was the one that reigned over the kings and commanded armies. Because if they didn't do what they said, the priest would excommunicate them and they'd go to hell, and they believed it. So the kings followed what the priest told them. And the priest wielded the kings and the armies at their will of the Catholic Church. And so when those Dominican priests set up the Inquisition in Spain, those priests wielded military power to round up all the Waldensians and all the other Bible-believing sects and brought them into the Inquisition and killed them. That's why I tell you, the Catholic Church is based on all in the Old Testament, nothing in the New Testament. They are based on a theocracy. And right now, we're not based on a theocracy. Christ has come. Now, when Christ comes back, we'll be based on a theocracy. But he will be physical, literal king. See? But the Catholic Church, you can't fellowship with the Catholic Church because they're based on the Old Testament. They're based on following the law, their law, the church law. Amen? What the priest says, just like this guy. They fall on statues, or they worship idols, just like these guys. Jeroboam, those two calves, all that. They fall on there where they have no definitive belief that they can get to heaven. Perhaps I can, perhaps I can't. They follow on the Old Testament. They have sacrifice every Sunday where they do the sacraments. And they make sacrifice. Omnis Dominus, Shantai, Antai, Botai, whatever. Okay? Everything they do is based on the Old Testament. Nothing on the New Testament. Everything they do, they based on going through somebody to get to God. You either go through the priest, or you got to go through Mary, or you got to pray to some saint. That's everything in the Old Testament. What did Saul do? He goes to the witch of Endor to get Samuel brought up so he can ask a question. It's a Catholic. That's what a Catholic does. Prays to dead people. Yeah. Nothing on, so here is where the Catholic Church builds it. So that's why the Catholic Church can't give you anything in the New Testament. If you try to pin down any Catholic, any typical pew-sitting Catholic, just the average Catholic, he can't tell you anything about the Bible.
That's right.
Well, I'll have to talk to Father Michael. I'll get back to you. Well, Father Michael says. Where'd you meet Father Michael? Well, we were at the pub.
Yeah. You're right.
Playing darts, smoking cigars, and having an evening drink with the Catholic priest. You say they do that? Sure they do that. I can tell you a bunch of them. The guy that led me to the Lord was a Catholic. The priest used to come every Saturday and sit down with his dad. They were both drunks and get drunk on the stoop at his house. Smoking cigarettes, drinking out there together. That was a Catholic priest. And Ted said, as a kid, I used to watch the Catholic priest do it. There's a Catholic priest. What? Because he don't believe the New Testament. He don't believe the Bible. It's all based in the Old Testament. All right, so now, verse 10. And to the captains over hundreds